Today I'm going to talk about how I would study if I had to retake my PNP boards in 2026. First of all, I would study less, but it would be way more intentional. So I'm going to walk you through that exact plan that I would follow if I had to start from scratch. So let me start with something very important. Nurse practitioner students do not fail these exams because they're not smart enough or they're not capable. They definitely are. They fail the exams because they're studying in a way that is not supportive of the way that boards actually test you. So if you're reading and then rereading the same information, if highlighting pages in your books, I just want you to pause for a second, okay? Because that's the way that you were taught, but that way does not translate to boards. So when you get to your boards and you see a clinical vignette, your brain is gonna freeze. So let's talk about ways that you can study that actually translates over to board. So here's something that you should keep in mind. 20% of the pediatric topics show up 80% of the time on boards. And this is that high yield core information that you really need to know. And once you get this down pat, then your confidence is going to shoot up. And if I were retaking the test over tomorrow, what I would do would be to start with topics like ADHD, asthma, Kawasaki, strep pharyngitis, pneumonia versus bronchiolitis, rashes, cardiac murmurs, and acute otitis media. I would start there. These are predictable, pattern-heavy topics, and once you understand those patterns, then the board test is going to seem much easier from there. So now that you're going to start with that high-yield core content, let's talk about a way to actually study that content. And we're going to take the simple version of active recall. And basically what you're going to do instead of rereading is you're going to close your notes, you're going to close your textbook, and you're going to flip over your highlighted papers, and then you're just going to have, type on your computer or write it out, everything regarding one topic. And then you'll open your book and compare and make sure that you're actually learning that information. Because what happens is 10 minutes of active recall can replace hours of rereading the same information over and over again, because now you're actually retrieving the information from your brain. You want to take a topic and say, what is this? How do I know? And what is the next step? And make sure that you know what is safe for that topic. That's how boards actually test. So now that you're studying high yield and you've started the process of doing active recall, the next thing that you want to do is to make sure that you're doing questions earlier on in your study plan, in your study action plan. Study and board questions are part of the learning process. I do 15 questions a day. And when you do this, you'll be able to see how boards think, and you'll start to notice patterns that you weren't noticing on your own. And my pro tip for studying board questions are to make sure that they have rationales, because part of that learning process is understanding why you got a question right or why you got a question wrong. And that needs to be taken care of in that study period, because that is when the learning actually happens. Before we wrap this up, I want to make sure that you know you do not need to study 8 hours a day. You do not need to know every pediatric condition. You just need a strategy that you can follow consistently. And part of that is knowing your high yield content, using active recall, and studying your questions earlier. And when you do that, your confidence level prior to boards will shoot up. You will feel prepared. You will go in there and pass that exam. So take what you need from this video and go out there and crush it. Talk to you in the next one. Bye.